All right. Welcome back to Autodesk Digital Builder Podcast. I am your host, Eric Thomas. Today, once again, we're in the Autodesk Gallery in San Francisco, and I'm joined by Henry Nutt III, a pre-construction executive from Southland Industries. Today, we're going to talk a lot about leadership, mental health in construction, and diversity, plus a lot more along the way. So, Henry, how are you feeling today?
Eric, I'm doing great. Had a long drive in from Sacramento. That's my day job. Yes, running around the world. But great day, nice and sunny out here in the Bay Area. So happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm always glad when I roll in and it's not super foggy. So it's been a good couple days popping back in and seeing some friends and making new friends as well. So thank you again for joining me. I know you've spent nearly 4 decades in the construction industry at this point. Can you tell me a little bit about your leadership style and philosophy in the moments in your career that really shaped and influenced your approach?
Yeah, my journey's been very interesting. When I first started at Southland, I came in I was a general superintendent at another company and stepped into a general superintendent role. So I was a boss of everyone. And there were a few people there that knew me, and for some reason, they didn't think I liked them, so they thought I might be after their jobs. And one gentleman in particular pulled me to the side one day at a job site on the roof I'll never forget. And he basically asked me, "When are you going to terminate me?" I did appreciate his question and thought, okay, I didn't think people were thinking like this, but I assured him that it was not my job or role or responsibility to go out and just cut people that I didn't like. And there was never an issue with him personally anyway, but we got a chance to talk with him. And one of the things that my division leader at that time told me when I came in, as a person that used to manage projects, which I did most of my career, now you're managing people. Yeah. And it's a very different type of role. And so it was an introduction to what was going to be really important in regards to people buying into my leadership, people wanting to follow me. And it taught me how to be that people person and really regulate, emotions, and never believe that women are the only ones who are emotional. Men can be very emotional.
I'm an emotional guy myself, frankly.
It's so, dealing with folks who are predominantly kind of these rugged guys in this industry that probably thought I was going to be a traditional type of leader. And that was just kind of a yeller, screamer, berate, which is traditional, unfortunately, in construction. But my objective was to get people to trust me. And I was going to come by developing relationships with them that was built on respect. And so over the years, I really began to kind of hone in on something that I didn't even realize was a part of my DNA, which was I really was a person that wanted to get to know people and build them up and help them grow into better versions of themselves, even in construction. And so I took that opportunity to not only develop this mass group of people I had to work on, but myself at the same time. And so I really hone in on being that person that can be approachable, stern, have high expectations, but fair at the same time. It was really about building the trusting relationship. And so I thought that was the very key to my success with being a superintendent for 12 years at Southland. I was able to develop relationships that were built on trust, where people really knew they can come and talk to me about the job or even some personal issues.
Yeah. I remember the first time that I managed people, I was not prepared for the level of responsibility, and I didn't feel particularly set up to be successful in that moment for a bunch of circumstances that don't necessarily matter for our conversation here. I just remember sitting with that responsibility because as a leader, I had to make sure that the work was getting done right, obviously, and I had a responsibility to the company, but I also had a responsibility to the people that I was managing to ensure that they were successful, felt safe, and trusted me. And it was a moment that I'm very grateful for having, because I also have a lot of empathy for the leaders that I've worked with as well. But I've also appreciated the ones that have communicated a lot of the things that you're talking about right here, as far as expectation setting and the open door policy, because up until some of the managers I had later on in my career, I'd never had anybody say anything like that to me before. It's like, I want you to feel comfortable coming and telling me things, whether it's tied to work or otherwise, and not feeling like I was in a position to be potentially punished for sharing how I felt and how I was experiencing any particular moment at work or otherwise. And it's given me a lot more empathy when working with others. And I'm not a people manager today, but I still take a lot of those lessons that I had in the year and a half that I was managing a small group. And if I step into a role in the future where I am leading other people again, I think I would approach it in a very different way than I had when I was set up previously.
Yeah, I had no idea the impact that that would have on all the people that I managed for years. And I realized the impact when I was actually transitioning out of that role and how many people would follow up with me via emails and different things that I would do on kind of a weekly basis of just sending leadership type information or little email snippets of different things that just kind of empower people. Like, hey, Henry, when you going to keep sending us that stuff, and or we miss you out here, and that kind of thing. So it was really impactful. And what I learned is that this industry really has, unfortunately, done a poor job of people management as a whole. It's just we've had a model that just never worked. On one hand, you get the job done, but at the cost of maybe really hurting people in the interim. And so that opportunity, working at a company like Southland, where there was a culture that allowed for that type of behavior and leadership, where it's promoted and even taught. It helped me to fit right where I felt like there was my sweet spot in my career and really exercising a gift that I think just was dormant for much of my life. And when I had the opportunity to actually build great things, but also do it with people by helping them develop who they were as men or women, that was just the icing on the cake. And so it's been a life-changing experience for me all the time that I had to do that.
And something you just said really resonates for me too. You were training people to be leaders, or your organization was training and empowering people to be leaders. And I think that was one thing that caught me off guard is I'd been a very successful proposal manager working with a group of people, but like I was a unit of one essentially. And when I stepped into that leadership role, I was not trained by the organization that I work for to become a people manager. And the skill sets that I needed to be successful in leading people versus managing proposals and working on contract modifications, a lot of them were very different skill sets. And I felt like I was doing a disservice at times to the people that did report to me because I was building those skills in the moment. And that was quite stressful, to be quite honest. And so organizations who do train their leaders very intentionally and create this environment that you're talking about, there's a lot of runway for success. And I think a lot of retention that comes with that too, because people see that.
Absolutely. I can tell you, I remember a quote that I saw on a social media platform years ago, and it's a CFO talking to a CEO, and the CFO, obviously the money person, saying, hey, what if we train them and they leave, meaning their staff? And the CEO looks back and says, well, what if we don't and they stay?
Yeah.
Right. And so it's the whole thing of what do you want as a company? And who do you want to be? Who do you represent? What do you want people to say about your company? And if you're not intentionally developing your people, then you might as well understand that they're walking backwards in many ways within the company, how they're running the projects. It's all going to come back and impact. So that investment is critical. And so coming to Southland and having a week training that was designed specifically for field and operations, which typically is always an operation type deal. You don't get the field folks involved in that kind of level of training, but we did. And it was immersive. It was productive. You got to meet the leadership and you have this time to really develop and kind of understand that one, we're investing in you. We believe in you. And we're going to take some time to help you understand why we want to develop you and where that connects to your role. And so it was a really great opportunity, again, to kind of connect some dots of things that I knew inherently, but never really able to exercise in my work. It was more of my personal life. And so this was a really great match, and just starting that journey with Southland and going to that training and knowing that not only can I be myself in this, I can reach for the stars and think entrepreneurially when it comes to how I want to exercise my role as a leader here.
I love that focus, and I'm glad you've had the opportunity to kind of flex those muscles. It's a really cool trajectory in your career, and I know you kind of refer to yourself as a more non-traditional superintendent, which I think is cool. You're bringing a new paradigm into a very traditional workforce. So the words empathy and vulnerability have come up in our conversation here. I'd love to talk a little bit more about those two topics specifically and how directly those impact performance and also retention in an organization.
Yeah. Sometimes, some of the terms and words we use, we can start using them very loosely and they start losing their intensity with people. But when I think about those two words, so first, vulnerability, it can be very scary. And I always believe that as much as you're willing to be vulnerable in a relationship is how strong that relationship is going to be. But it is a scary thing. There's a risk behind that. I'm going to share something that may make me seem weak, or people will look at me differently. And obviously, you have to create an environment that allows for people to want to do that. But then at the same time, I'm not saying you're going to be telling me all your deepest secrets, but there is a level of understanding like, hey, I don't know this. When it comes to our job, we are so prideful and have this ego-driven kind of mentality where we won't ever say what we don't know. And we rather fall and fail and pretend like we get it. You know, we fake it till we make it many times. And I wanted people to understand that I'm okay with you not knowing, because if I know that you don't know or don't understand this fully, let's review it again, or let me help get you some training. Let me help get you some information to help you be better. That's what I want you to do. It's not a gotcha moment. And I think many times the culture of this industry has too many gotcha moments. I knew you weren't the one. I knew you couldn't do this. And then you're shamed. And so you just close up. And so if you've experienced that for a good part of your career or your life, and someone tells you or says, hey, it's okay to be vulnerable, the first thing they're doing is putting up the roadblock saying, I don't think so, right? So then empathy comes into play when you really understand how you can place yourself in someone else's shoes, right? And how you can recognize that what they're experiencing, like you identify with it. And maybe you don't live it, maybe you don't even understand it to a full degree, but you were trying to say that, you know what? There's something to that, you know, and I have to put that myself in this person's shoes. And I'll never forget with one of our superintendents that 9 years of being at our company, and he decided to send me an email randomly at like 9:30 at night. I remember I was about to go to sleep and I get this email, and he's okay with me saying his name. So I'm going to say his name. His name is Ron Heiss, and he retired recently, 40 years in the industry, great leader, ran many of the largest jobs around the Bay Area, and was not known for being empathetic. That wasn't his middle name, right? So in this email, he wrote me a letter saying, it's my anniversary. I'm so happy that I was able to spend this amount of time at this company. It's changed my life. And one day you used the word empathy at an event or something. And I said to myself, this is him talking, that word does not belong in construction. Like, what is Henry talking about? You know, and I think probably a whole bunch of other people would have said the same thing. But he said over time, he got to see myself and others really showcase what that meant in real life at a time when he needed some empathy. Maybe he didn't realize it, that he received that, and he received understanding and patience. And so he said over the time, he really learned how powerful that was for him. And it literally has changed not only his way as how he operates as a leader at Southland, but how he operates as a husband and a father.
Wow.
And I got to see this man do some different things that he would have never done. And one that was most impactful to me, and always will be, is how he engaged with people that did not look like him. We do a lot of work with workforce development. We take a lot of opportunities to bring in students or folks who are just trying to think of, is this my path for career? And we go to these different organizations of people who are all different types of backgrounds. And normally it's like there's a set group that you will want to hire because they look the part, they talk the part, and you just go down that path versus seeing everyone in the room. And so going to this event, he really didn't want to be a part of it, but I was his boss. I forced him to go the first couple of times. Then he began to see, because he hired some people that he thought weren't going to be credible, and they turned out to be some of his best apprentices. And so that really affected him and helped shape what we call like an implicit bias training. He was getting that in a way that was very rich and authentic and real for him, where he really began to see women, people of color, anyone that had a skill set, a desire to work in our industry, and for our companies in particular. He made a way to make it happen. He was a great advocate. I miss him in the way that he did that, because he helped show me that it's possible, that you can see all people, and vulnerability and empathy were some of the key attributes that helped shape that.
I love that story, and just the evolution over time, kind of putting him in very key moments where kind of go, okay, here's a little more perspective because you've had a chance to speak with different people, or you had the opportunity to hear more stories about where somebody comes from. The fact that some of these apprentices that he didn't anticipate were going to be effective turned out to be great. What a great proof case for somebody to go, oh, okay, maybe I should start paying more attention over here. And maybe I should start thinking about a more broad set of opinions when I'm making choices based on my projects. And, and like obviously every construction project is not a democracy, and not everybody's going to vote for every choice you're going to make. That would not be realistic.
Sure.
But I think having that diverse set of opinions and perspectives really uncovers some blind spots too, because we don't know what we don't know. And I've gotten to a point in my career now where I'm very comfortable saying, I don't know so many things. There are so many things that I don't know. And as a younger person, to your point earlier, I probably would have tried to hide that a little bit. You go, yeah, no, I've got this under control. I know what's going on, and I'll go figure it out later. And I found there's so much room to have a productive conversation in what might be a little bit of an uncomfortable moment where I go, okay, this is a blind spot for me, whether I'm talking about technology or people or experiences. And I'm grateful for the leaders who have helped me get to this point in my life where I can just very comfortably be like, I don't know that, and that's okay.
Right.
But you also have to set that expectation, I think, for the people that work for you, and let them know it's okay to say that. You don't have to bolster and be all the bravado or whatever.
Yeah.
If you don't know it, let's have a conversation about it. And it's probably going to save us some money, because we're not going to make mistakes along the way because you didn't go break something when you're trying to figure it out,
Exactly. It reminds me of another story. We recently did a presentation on mental health. And we had 4 different people representing 4 different companies. And our safety manager, lady by the name of Avneet, she talked about uncomfortableness and how that's a stage or a period of our lives when, if we embrace it, we'll learn something.
Yeah.
Because it's just part of our growth opportunity, is when we have that level of uncomfortability. And we all get there. We all like the way things are. We don't want to see change. And when those things kind of come in, that kind of like unplanned events or situations, and we don't know, our kind of reaction is just to kind of get defensive or kind of go back to what we know. And maybe we're missing something. So part of it is I like to tell people, take a pause, breathe, and embrace this moment for a second. Doesn't have to be this thing dramatic. It's just like, take a minute before you just react to something, and embrace this level of, why do I feel weird about, because I don't have an answer, or I'm supposed to know this. And guess what? If you're in a position where you have some authority, but you're also in a culture and a climate that is okay with you kind of letting your hair down figuratively, then you don't get that quick defense kind of response. You will embrace it and say, hey, you know what? I don't know either. And sometimes if you as a leader and the top leader says that with courage and truth, your folks who respond to you are going to be forever changed by seeing this person that they highly respect, but then they see this man or woman also be vulnerable and say, I didn't know.
Yeah.
Because one thing for sure that I've learned at almost 40 years in the industry is I still see myself as just Henry Nutt III. I get up, put my pants on with one leg at a time like anybody else. But when you show up, there are people who see you in these different roles for years, or they've seen you on social media or whatever in leadership capacities, and they're like, oh, that's Henry Nutt. And I'm thinking like, yeah, and right?
I'm just a guy.
I'm just a guy, right? But when you really understand that, and they see you function and say, I don't know either, you're like, what? It really is impactful. And so that's helped me in the last, say, decade of my life, recognizing that, okay, there's a platform I've reached, and I'm grateful and I'm humble, and it's a great opportunity that I've had. But I also know there are people watching.
Yep.
And there are people who look to you to see how you're going to react and respond, whether it's out in public or just in a quiet room. People are watching how you do things because you're giving them license on what to do. And I think that's the pattern, as we've seen enough of the bad behavior in construction. If you're the loudest, you're the most disrespectful. If you berate people, you don't give people the time of day. That's the pattern. That's what it's going to take for me to get to be the next boss.
Yep.
And guess what? Okay, I'm going to do that. And when you ask people those questions, like, well, that's how I was taught. Whether it was deliberate or just indirect, you just saw that as the behavior. You had to kind of rise to that behavior of how to be the most disrespectful towards your team. That's how you're going to get that commanding attention. And unfortunately, it's worked, but it was fear-driven, And so I believe that it's really important as how leaders show up and give people license.
And just the really living that truth as well. You can tell people that all day long, but if you're still the boss that's screaming and yelling at everybody else, they see that. And you're molding the next leader. Your project engineers are sitting outside that conference room where the executives are screaming at each other and talking down or really angry. And people care about this industry, obviously. It's okay to be impassioned, but it's not okay to be disrespectful and dismissive. And I think every day you see that, especially if you're really young and you haven't been shown anything else, what else would you expect to happen is when they get promoted from PE to project manager, they're going to live and walk that truth because that's what they've seen for the last 5 or 6 years of their career. And I think we really have to work hard to break that cycle. And this kind of shifts into the next couple of questions that I want to ask. You mentioned mental health a moment ago, and I was hoping you could just share some of your thoughts on the broader state of mental health in construction and what's contributing to what I think many consider to be a crisis. And where do we have the most work to do right now?
Yeah, it is indeed a crisis, Eric. We come a long way. I'm the hopeful one and see the good that's happening, but I know it's under a plethora of many decades of quite the opposite. We've come into some breaking points where we know, I think it's not a secret, our suicide rate is at historical numbers, are amongst men, specifically white men. Our substance abuse is above industry standards, and alcoholism is really high, in our industry. So in those areas, we have these unfortunately negative statistics where we outrank other industries, and it's killing our people, like literally, right? I don't know if it was during the COVID and we began to kind of embrace our ability to lower our guards when I'm on camera, but my kid is able to come in the background and sneak a peek into the camera while I'm in a business meeting, right? And we begin to say that's okay. This is life. This is just who we are. And at some point, we begin to kind of let that guard down in some ways, and we begin to have different kind of conversations. I mean, we're seeing people dying thousands by the thousands with COVID. And I believe there's a shift that happened in that time where we start giving ourselves the license to say, I'm not okay today.
Yeah.
And I think what we have to be careful of with that is that we tend to use these words that become, they lose their intensity because we use them so loosely that people don't want to say them anymore, although they're still very powerful and very meaningful. And so the mental health crisis that we're in is rallying a charge of people around the country that understand how important it is to be advocates and leaders in this area, where whether they have known somebody personally or they've known somebody that's known someone, we're all touched by it. And how does someone who decides to come to work to end their life? And we didn't know. Many times the people that are closest had no idea that they were in this place in their heart and mind where that's something that they had been contemplating, where they actually did it. And it makes you just pause and you think about it, and then it makes you think about, what can I do different? How do I become that person that can be an advocate, that can be just that one voice to say, would they come and talk to me? And not that we can save the world and save everyone, but when we spend more time recognizing that it's the people behind the hammer and the chisel and the computer that matter the most, then we give people licenses to say, hey, today, something's not feeling right with me. And we don't think they're joking. We don't think they're pretending. We don't think they're trying to get a day off for nothing. It's really about humanizing our industry. And we have gotten to that place where we're just machines and we get the job done. We want to understand what our productivity rates are and beat the time and beat the next person and get it in fast and quick and all these things. And sometimes we lose the sight that that's Jerry, that's Sarah there doing that work, right? Do we understand Sarah's circumstances right now? Do we understand what she goes home to, and she catches the bus to work, or she has 3 kids and her guy walked out on her, or whatever it may be, right? Like, and it's not about understanding and knowing everyone's business for the sake of being busy, a busybody. It's about understanding who are the people that serve us every day and do the job that we applaud and desperately need. And we want them to stay in this industry. And in this industry is one that has, again, had a reputation of not taking care of its people. And we have a desperate need we want folks to have a desire. This becomes a destination. I want to go into construction. Maybe I don't know exactly where and what, but I know that's my path. But we have got this image that it's for folks who, they don't care about people. You're going to work all these long hours and doesn't matter. The job isn't the most important thing. So it's about how we humanize ourselves and show up for each other, build these great structures around the country with quality and greatness, but remembering that it's done with people and taking the time to pause and make sure that those people are good.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot of intentional signposting that everybody needs to do along the way to let people know, like, if you don't feel okay, it's okay to come talk to me about that. Because there's a really sad stigma around mental health that's not just limited to the construction industry. It's a stigma that's more broad, where people will talk about, oh, I hurt my back all day long. They'll happily talk about it, they hurt their back. But mentally, it's as equally, if not more important than your physical health. And we largely just kind of brush it under the rug, and we have to do better. I'd love to hear if you have any thoughts just on trying to create that environment that makes sure that it doesn't feel so hard to talk about mental health, in trying to do away with some of this stigma. And obviously, you and I, we don't have all the answers to a very large problem by sitting in this room today and talking about it. But I think we have to keep talking about it, even when it's uncomfortable.
Yeah. Yeah. A couple of things I think about the last, say, 15 years of my journey with partnering with a couple of organizations that really focus on collaboration and making that a part of the contract method, and how people are going to be kind of forced to work together. They're going to be tied at the hip with their profit. And recognizing that their performance and how they collaborate is directly tied to that quality work and how they collaborate with each other. That sets up a platform for folks initially to come to a job site, to a project, where they're going to be communicating about their work, about bringing to light, what is my plan for tomorrow, and what do I need from the others in order for that plan to come into fruition. And so, and this is at every level of the job, whether you're an architect, engineer, or you're working in the trenches. It's like there's a forced kind of collaboration. When I say forced, it's not like we're making you do it. It's really more about, in order for you to be successful, you're going to need to talk with this person.
Yeah.
And so that has brought the folks like myself back in the day, when I'm wearing the Carhartts and the overalls on the job site, I'm a part of that conversation. Those folks are in that conversation, collaborating and talking about what they need from others in order to get their jobs done. And those kind of conversations didn't happen many, many years ago. You just got it done. And if you got in first, you were the winner. And so you force someone else to lose is how you win. And now we're about, if one loses, we're all losing. So let's figure out how we build this as a team and as a unit. And I think about some of the young children now that have this kind of collaborative learning style, and they're working together. And I remember when my kids were young, they would kind of complain and say, well, Dad, such and such is not doing their part, and now this affecting our whole team. I said, you know what? You're right. And that's what happens in the real world.
Yeah.
So you have to figure out, how are you going to create a solution around that? What are you going to do, right? Yes, you're tight at the hip with other people, and that can bring you down. And what's that quote of that? You can go fast all alone, but you won't go as far by yourself, right? And so it's recognizing that, but at the same time, because we're having these conversations, we are now learning who people are. We're talking about team building and these things that, like, I have a kid that plays soccer, or you're sharing about who you are as a human being. And so when things go wrong, they will go wrong in any industry, but in construction, we see all the things that can go wrong. You now suddenly know Dave as father and a soccer coach, not just a sheet metal worker or a pipe fitter. You know that person, and you know a little bit about who they are. And so it helps us to kind of bring down those walls that we tend to come up with, because you can go to work every day for years and not really know the people you work next to. And so it kind of, again, that humanizing. And as a leader, it's important that we set that tone, not just in our words and in our bullet pointed speeches, but in our action and how we show up every day. And when we don't have a good day, we're actually able to say, you know what? I'm pressing through, right? I'm here and I'm going to get it done, but it's not my best day, right? And you're okay saying that. And again, you're giving others license to, like, not to fail, not to make an excuse, but you're giving license for people to say, you know what? I'm going to share that with my own team members.
Yep.
I'm going to give them that grace, and So these different words that never showed up in construction are now appearing, and people are sometimes a little bit spooked out about it. And if for some, it feels soft. And I have to continue to talk about that amongst people, about soft skills. And I actually don't like the term soft skills because it's not a soft, it's a skill, and I understand it, but it's so hard for people to do it.
Yeah, it's a very difficult skill to develop.
Challenging.
Yeah. And I love your point about giving grace as well. And I've shared this on Digital Builder before, but I was diagnosed with ADHD 5 or 6 years ago, and it explained a lot of things that felt very hard for me as a younger person that are still hard, but I have some context on why, and a lot of very intentional work to help manage and navigate that. And part of the giving myself grace on the days that I haven't had a good day has been fairly empowering at times, where I'm like, okay, like this isn't going well. I'm not going to get this done today. And instead of just trying to grind away and feel terrible in the process, I go, okay, we're going to pause today. Tomorrow we'll come back to this. It's going to be a better day. But also in the process of just communicating that to other people as well, and helping them understand, okay, I'm struggling with this and this is why, and talking about it. But another thing that I thought about when you were speaking here was, we don't necessarily know what everybody's going through every day. And I think at work, sometimes it's very easy to attribute a conflict at work or a missed deadline or a drop deliverable or whatever that might be to some sort of malice at somebody else who's maybe made that mistake or not given you the thing you need or was sharp in the moment in a meeting and they said something, but we don't really know what's happening in their life in that particular moment. And I've tried to just start accepting, like, okay, that didn't go very well. If I know them well or not, maybe I'll ask a question, see if they're doing okay or not. And another example I've heard of that before is like, you get cut off in traffic and like your reaction is like, I'm angry now. What is that jerk doing? They cut me off. Like, who knows what kind of day that person is having? What might have happened? Maybe they're on the way to the hospital. Maybe they're sick, maybe something else. And so I think just kind of accepting some of that in the moment, but also giving folks grace and understanding everything you see in front of you might not be everything that's happening, and just making it okay to talk about some of that stuff when previously I think we've always been like, well, it's business. You just got to get it done. And like, yes, of course we do, but we're all still people at the core of this, and we all have to be kind to each other, and the job will get done. It's just a lot of respect needs to be offered on both sides of the conversation along the way.
Yeah. And you're going to get more out of that person when they really know you care about them.
Yep.
That was one of the key factors for me as a superintendent, is that at the end of the day, I knew the people that worked for me, they all knew that I cared about them. I cared about them getting their job done, going home safely, but also cared about them when they went home. And I wasn't quick to judge someone when something went wrong. One of the first things I learned when I had an incident was an early superintendent. My construction manager said, just go down there, get the facts. Don't get sucked into the stories, just get the facts, and then we'll figure out what we need to do with that. And it taught me that I need to be a person that can be centered, that I can go in there and hear two sides of a story and say, okay, I'm not going to point a finger or make a judgment or listen to my buddy more. It's more about, I'm here to get facts. And I have to make decisions based on facts because I have the authority to affect your life. And I'm going to do it fairly. And that's all I can do. And so no decisions are ever made out of emotion, especially the higher you climb in corporate America and business. You have to recognize that your level of mistakes as you climb are less tolerable as you climb the ladder.
Yeah.
Because you have more of an impact with your errors and the things that you do. And we've seen that in the last several years with folks making poor decisions as leaders, and there's zero toleration, like you're out of here, like immediately, right? But as you climb that ladder, you have the respect for the role and the gravity of the role. And therefore, that's again where training is so important, because so many people come to the industry, they just want to go and build something. They just want to go do what they've done and what they've loved and work with their hands. And suddenly somebody put them in charge because they do it really well. Yeah. So if you're the best at that, I'm going to make you the boss. I'm not going to train you at all, but now you're in charge of 8 people or 10 people, and you're going to go run this floor of this building.
And you don't get to build anything anymore.
Don't get to build, yeah. So you stop doing what you love, and now I'm putting this pressure. So because of that person, of how they're wired, how they even got to where they are, is because they give a damn about what they do they go to bed at night thinking about it, and they come to work ready to go and have it all planned out. Now you put them in this whole different environment where one thing the job won't do is talk back. It just does it, right? People now have opinion, and now you're being challenged with that. And so what do? You blow up, and you just frustrate and just say what you need to say inappropriately, and you let it out. You feel better, and the other person is completely in shambles, and you don't know any better. So those simple things that we think, oh, everybody should know how to do that. It's just common decency. Not always the case.
Yeah. And I think it takes some time to learn these skills. It's not simple to lead people or to continue to accept more responsibility. And I think organizations, they have a lot of responsibility in empowering the people to be successful too. As I mentioned earlier, like I didn't feel like I was set up to be successful the first time that I had a small team to lead, and that really bothered me. Some people that might not bother. I've seen that as well,
Yeah.
but there's a lot of responsibility of a manager into the overall wellness and success of the individual. And that's not just about the work that they're doing. That's also what happens at home and their ability to pay their mortgage and feed their family and so many more things.
Yeah.
So we talked a little bit about the labor challenge, and of course, we need to be able to bring in talent from all walks of life, as you were talking about earlier, and had experienced some moments where, somebody might have pushed back because they weren't drawing in from an area where everybody, looked like them or sounded like them or had the same experience. I'd like to hear a little bit more about your thoughts on creating that welcoming environment for folks from all diverse backgrounds to fill all these seats, but especially bringing those people into leadership positions.
Yeah, it's a great question. It's another big conversation that we're having around the industry and partnering with workforce development organizations that, by rights, are doing great work preparing people who have identified construction as their career path. And we want to partner with the labor unions and companies that will ultimately hire them to help shepherd them in. And it's a great thing. What we have to do in addition to that is prepare those leaders who will go out there and talk to these people. And they're not always young people. I used to just use the word loosely, they're young. Some of them are 35, 40 years old that decided, I want to change careers.
Yep.
And so they are all being introduced to this, and you are the representative for construction for them. And so in order for us to make that connection where it sticks, it's one thing to get people in the industry. It's another thing for them to stay.
Yeah.
And we have had this issue with that. And so many times it's because of how they're being treated. And so we want to, I was just sitting with a partner in workforce development organization just 2 days ago, and we're talking about that and how there's training needed for those companies that they're out there volunteering their time, sending people to these organizations to talk to students about the opportunities that exist. And they've done their thing. It's kind of like they've checked their box. Many times they don't see the talent, or they don't know how to present themselves in a way where somebody would say, like recruiting, like, why would I gonna come work for you if you haven't showcased your company about where would I fit there?
Yeah.
And so we have to do a better job at how we train the people that come down and talk to see real talent, one, and to recognize how to articulate what a day in the life looks like. What would get you fired day one? What would get you, a promotion in 2 years? Those kind of things that you can have those real conversations if you are fully immersed and believe in it. If you're not really engaged and this is something that you do because you're forced to do it, then you're not going to be authentic with it. And it's going to read loud and clear to that group that don't believe what you're saying and don't feel it's very authentic and know that it's going to be a short-lived experience, if nothing else. We've seen some of our teams, and this goes back to some of Ron's leadership, is that one of his best apprentices that became a detailer, and another one of our pipe fitters was a foreman, had a truck. And so different people that have been cultivated and mentored in our industry. And that's something that we want to be very deliberate about in mentoring. And mentoring can mean all types of different things in regards to how you do it. And it's not like you're going to have somebody under your wing for 5 years or even 3 years. It's maybe you have a conversation with someone, and that's it. And so it's about how you, again, show up and create this visual for what the trajectory of this person who is barely a pre-apprentice and has aspirations to become the next you, And I think we have to share those stories like that and ask those questions and challenge them. Like, what is it that you want to be?
Yeah.
And giving them that inspiration and then authenticating it by helping them see that it's very possible and that you would be one to help them get to that next step. And that's real work. And it takes time, and it's being diligent and being consistent and having messaging that reads loud and clear that I really do mean what I'm telling you. And that's some of the hard work, because after a couple of weeks or a month, that person kind of goes away, you don't see him anymore, and it just kind of fades to black. Well, you want to make sure you're being deliberate, and that requires that commitment level where you support it for the long run and help watch this person grow and develop into the next leader, because we need that group of people, not just with the interest of getting into construction, but actually want to take charge.
Yeah.
Actually want to be in those roles where there's a responsibility and there's risk that they're mitigating, and they understand how to navigate through these potholes and dealing with people that can be adversarial, and they got to figure out how to monitor themselves, and because they've watched you, right? And those are just the patterns. And that's the nature of construction has always been journeyman apprentice. That person shadows you. You're going to actually retire, and you want that kid one day to take your job. I mean, that's really the model that we have had over the years, is how we duplicate ourselves in someone else so they can one day take our job, and we're not threatened by that. But now it's not so much like that, where people are threatened. I'm going to hold my information close to the cuff because you might take my job. And that's, again, in the wrong culture, that's what will happen every day. In the right culture, you're not threatened. I remember one day when there's a guy now at our company who's in a very prominent role. He used to work for me. And I finally asked him after we have our reviews every year. And I said, hey, what do you want to be in 5 years? He said, I want your job. Anybody else, typically, we're threatened.
Yeah, freak out. You go, oh, he's coming for me.
As soon as that interview or that work is done, as soon as you're done with that review, you're finding out ways how to poke holes in that plan. And suddenly, hey, we're getting slow. I'm going to have to let you go, right?
Yeah.
I wasn't threatened by him. What I was excited about, I said, okay, let's figure out how to make it happen. And so over the years, he actually didn't get the job that I had, but he got something really close and probably better. And he walks by my office every once in a while and says, be careful what you wish for, huh? And I said, you're in it now, right?
Yeah.
And so it's one of those things where I didn't know what I'd be doing, but I knew I wasn't going to be threatened by him wanting my job, because I felt like we're both going to grow, And I think that's the spirit of the company that I work for and the people that make that culture work. And it's helped him thrive, So that's how we really cultivate and want to duplicate leaders in our company. And we have to be diligent about it.
Yeah. And there's a lot that goes into making these choices and decisions. Everything you're talking about here does not happen by accident. You don't fumble and stumble into bringing people up into leadership roles and making sure you're doing so in a way that is equitable for everybody that works for you. The fact that you're putting in this hard work and you're not threatened by folks who are, aiming for your job, not in like an aggressive way, like I want to displace you, but I want to do what you do. And they see you as a leader and role model and are excited about what you're doing. Exactly. And it says a lot, because let's be real, in the workplace, there's a lot of folks where if we part ways, where we either move to do companies or do departments or teams, we might not ever talk ever again. Not out of any malice or anything. It's just, okay, we're doing a job. We're over here. We're doing this. Yeah. And the fact that the people that you've worked for and the people that work for you keep coming back and have something to say is a big testament to your leadership and the approach and style. And I'm inspired by it. It's a really impressive approach and way that you've decided to hold yourself and the people that work for you. And I want to come back to something you talked about earlier, just having those uncomfortable conversations, or the raw ones. And I'd be curious to know a bit more about creating a workplace or an environment where you can have those tough conversations and still keep them within the appropriate confines for work, because a lot of things happen in construction. A lot of people have a lot of opinions. I'd just like to hear a little bit more about how you've kind of navigated that in your career.
Yeah, I've got a few examples in that. I had a gentleman that worked for me for about 4 years total at that point, but he was known for being a yellow screamer. He came from another company, and great, talented guy, but just didn't fit in that area, but he was worth my time and trying to invest and see how can we make this better. So he did a couple things that were challenging and brought me in front of HR, and I had to have a sit down with him. One thing I pride myself on, and I think is really important, is that I don't make threats. I talk to people with fairness and a calm voice, but I would tell people, if you're the one in authority, you don't need to scream and yell to fire somebody. I don't have to do all that to let you go.
Yeah,
I can be
you're
very
already the
calm.
boss.
Yeah, and I was like scratch my head when I see people who are in charge and you act like you're a 3-year-old rolling on the ground to get attention. Like, you don't have to do that. You know. So we would have some one-on-ones, and we'd talk about like that question or that conversation about what can get you fired day one. And what you're doing now, you're going to put me in a position where you're essentially handcuffing me to do anything for you, because you are going off this path that is not okay within regards to how we deal with these types of issues. And said it very seriously, very sternly. And I said, so the next time this happens, you're going to be in a situation and you're going to be by yourself. Unfortunately, that situation came up for him. And he was in a situation by himself. I knew what was going to happen, but I pulled myself out and I said, I need him to sweat and deal with this.
Yeah.
And he did. And they didn't let him go, but he got the message and began to kind of take some corrective action and what he needed to do. In another situation, I had a gentleman, two were almost coming to blows at a job site. And I was out there that day and are you kidding me? Like, we're like fighting on the job, right?
Yeah.
Almost fighting.
Enough things happening in the job site. We don't need this.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And so I decided that, because I didn't have all the facts, I sent the one that I knew was more aggressive in this. Okay, you're going to go home. And he went home with pay. Like, you're getting paid to go home while I figure out what I need to do. And he was there for 2 days. And I think almost the third day, he was, what's going to happen to me? Like, he was pretty shook up.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, let's come in. Come in the office. And I was developing some training material for us to kind of walk through and reiterate my expectations of a person in his role. And so we walked through that, shared some stories. He talked to me about different things he's went through. And I said, okay, we're gonna try this again, but I have an expectation of what you're gonna do. Right. And this guy had been through lots of different things in his life. He had been in prison before, but he was one of our top leaders and he did great work. Got a chance to sit down with him one-on-one for a few days and kind of help him kind of reposition where he was in regards to the whole scenario that happened. And ultimately he worked out, and he's not a perfect guy by any means, but those kind of situations never happened again.
Yeah.
And he kind of, for whatever moments, like this wake up aha moment that he had, that I didn't have to treat him with disrespect and yell at him and threaten him. It was more about, hey dude, what you're doing is not cool. This is going to get you fired. You're either going to have to figure out how we get to the place where you need to be the guy that is going to represent our leadership in the way that we want it to be, or you're going to find work somewhere else.
Yep.
And that was it, and then we did that training and he really began to correct himself. So it was the trust that we built over time. And I knew him for a long time prior to that happening, and just cultivating that environment where, Henry's a cool dude, but he don't take any mess.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm serious. I'm fun. I'll laugh at a joke, but the job is more important. Right. And like recognizing you give people license on how to treat you, but how you treat them. And so I live by that rule. It's something that my father kind of showed me is that you just kind of live by these creeds that there shouldn't be this, oh, I'm this guy on the soccer field and I'm a different guy at the job site. Like, no, just be you.
Yeah.
And that's good enough. Right. And we'll figure out how to improve where we need to. But I don't want you to live this duplicit lifestyle. I want you to be able to show up as you are, get your job done, but don't feel like you have to change to fit in here, And so I think, again, exemplifying that and cultivating that kind of culture allowed my team to really come to me and have hard conversations that didn't feel as heavy.
Yep.
But we actually got a lot of stuff done, with the conversations we had.
That second example here really resonates for me because I think many of us, especially early in our career, have had moments where we've been on the receiving end of that conversation, where we've said something or done something where a leader brings you in and goes, well, this is what happened and I could fire you right now, but I'm not going to. And I'll be honest, I had it happen once early in my career. And for a long time, that would randomly cross my mind, and I'd lay in bed and just think about it and just mortified because, like, retrospectively, it could have changed the career trajectory of my life.
Yeah.
And I'm incredibly grateful for that leader
Yeah.
who took the moment to go, you screwed up. And this is why. I'm not going to fire you right now, but you need to think about what you did and carry on. And it's deeply embarrassing, to be honest. I'm not going to go into the details.
Yeah,
It's
yeah, yeah.
irrelevant here.
Yeah.
But I think the example you're talking about here really reigns true. And a good leader can see the people that are hopefully worth that teachable moment and take that opportunity as well.
Yeah.
And I think in construction too, especially with the challenges of bringing people in and training them and retaining them, like if you see that road ahead, like maybe take it,
Yeah.
sit down and say, okay, here's what happened and here's why I'm upset.
Yeah.
And really give them that extra context too, because if you just scream at them and say, don't ever do it again, and then send them back out, they might not take away what you had intended for that moment as well. And those are uncomfortable conversations. It was really uncomfortable.
They are. And you said something really key, Eric, and that leader that is able to see the folks that are worth a second chance, and not quick to throw someone away. And that's really important. That's a skill set.
Yeah.
And many times we want to just dump, I'm done, and we don't see the value in that person, or we don't care to see it. And we're just thinking, who's up next? And I think that we don't have the luxury of just cycling through people, especially if you've invested in them in any length of time. And that's kind of money down the drain in a sense, or someone else is going to take them on and they're going to cultivate it. So it behooves us at least to try, and not be quick to just terminate. There's some things that in my 12 years as a general superintendent at Southland, there were probably like 3 people that I fired. And even that was hard. But I always tell people the story that they fired themselves because they put themselves in situations where it's just, there's no option here.
Yep.
You have to go, you know? But there are things that I think are important as a leader, that you try to see the best, you give that grace that you talked about. And I think for that to happen, you have to be giving yourself grace, and not thinking about what happened to you when you were in that boat. We've come full circle now. Let's think differently. Let's be better versions of ourselves. Let's grow. And again, going back to that personal development, that training, that's so important for all of us.
Yeah. And I think the folks that have been in the hot, uncomfortable seat in those, when they are leaders later, like I hope they remember that moment if they were given the second chance too, because there's a conversation to be had, and depending on the trajectory of that conversation, then you make your choice. Okay.
Yeah.
Like we can salvage this. Here's the learning moment. Don't do this again. And they're hard, but they're valuable conversations.
Yeah.
Well, Henry, I've got one more question for you. What is one tool that you use on every project, no matter what project you're working on?
My tool of choice is mindset.
I like it. And I'm not surprised.
So I think about the moving parts of life, the moving parts of construction, my saving grace in everything that I do. And I'm not saying I do it perfectly every time, but when I can show up with a mindset that is appropriate for the setting, that helps me rise above the drama of what's happening and being open to what's possible, what might have happened, not just stuck into what I heard somebody tell me, maybe what my first mind is thinking. It's like, again, that pausing for a minute and saying, okay, let me make sure when I show up here, I show up with a mindset that is going to listen, that is going to hear, that is going to pause, that is going to reflect, that's not going to react in every setting, and try to like rise above, like emotionally around what's happening, so I can hear and see maybe what's not being said, read some of the emotions and body language of what's going on, so that I'm not just spun out of control and then get sucked into something that may be completely off. So my mindset is what I really reflect on a lot, and how I show up as a human every day, and gives me the opportunity to be what people need and what I need to be in any given moment.
And it sounds like your mindset has evolved a lot over time. And I think that's a really important skill as a leader too, because you step back and go, okay, the circumstances have changed, or maybe I've learned a new fact about whatever problem or plan that we've had. I'm going to change my mind, or I'm going to change the way we approach this because of what I've learned today. And that's not easy all the time as well, especially if we've been set in our ways for a while, whatever particular topic we're talking about. But Henry, I've got to say, if I was out on the project side, I think I'd enjoy working for you. And I've just really enjoyed this conversation a whole bunch. So thank you for joining me and sharing your perspective with everybody out there listening today. And of course, if you haven't figured this out yet, I'm your host, Eric Thomas. We are on YouTube, so if you are listening on audio, you should run over to YouTube today and check it out, because we are in the absolutely beautiful Autodesk Gallery here in San Francisco, and you can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and all those fun places. Also, if you want to chat with me or ask me any questions, just reach out on LinkedIn. I'm not hard to find. I'm only Eric Thomas that works at Autodesk. Till the next time, goodbye.